Okay, planning board, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the East Hampton Town's Planning Board, our work session and regular meeting for August 27th, 2025. We have no public hearings today, but we do have 6 items on for work session, and we've got quite a number of items on for a regular meeting as well, plus some boards of review. So we're going to jump into it. The first item is Land and Marina. That is Brian for the Planning Department, and Ava, that's you for the board.
Good evening, Chairman Crew, Planning Board members. Brian Frank on behalf of the Planning Board, Planning Department. And we're here tonight to review the EAF that has been prepared for the Lands and Marina application. The EAF has been drafted by the Planning Department on behalf of the board based on the history of the application and the issues that were identified along the way. As the board may recall, this application was most recently discussed by the planning board back in April, where it was determined that the application had progressed sufficiently enough to go to the zoning board for the required natural resources special permit and wetland setback variance that's required for the sanitary system. If you may remember, shortly before that, there was a question about whether some of the structures that were less than 100 feet from the wetland were considered water-dependent uses, and since then, the building department made a determination that the bathrooms, the freezer, and a number of other structures were water-dependent uses based on the zoning district. And the zoning board did have a hearing on the natural resources special permit application and variance application back in July, and they discussed the application for approval at their work session in early August, but cannot formally act until a secret declaration is made by the lead agency. The planning board established itself as the lead agency back in 2013. So although conceptually the application was at least discussed for approval, I think is accurate, the zoning board can't formally issue a determination until a declaration pursuant to secret is issued. So with that, I'd like to kind of briefly run through the history of the application and maybe sit down at the presentation station while I do that, if you don't mind.
Right. By the way, I didn't ask, is the applicant here? I assume the applicant is here. Is he Rick? Okay, great.
So the application, the site plan special permit application is for a dock extension to accommodate an additional 25 vessels. There was some back and forth, a discussion about the number of existing boat slips compared to the proposed. A total of 49 boat slips are proposed, and there are 24 existing slips, so 25 slips are proposed. There may be a couple of places where that wasn't corrected in the memo, but for the sake of clarity, there are 24 boat slips and 25 are proposed in the dock extension application. The application consists of a dock extension, a 960 square foot, 2-story bathroom on the first floor, office on the second floor with attached decking, dumpster exclosure, concrete pad with a walk-in freezer, additional parking, and fencing, and involves an upgraded sanitary system. The EAF Part 2 short form consists of 11 questions. The Planning Department believes that the issues that have been identified by the department, the Planning Board, and the Zoning Board along the length of the application are best grouped into 2 or 3 questions, and those involve the questions regarding compatibility with existing plans, intensification of land use, and potential impacts to water quality. So as the board may know, and if you don't mind, I'm going to switch over to one of the aerials of the area. This is the Coonsfoot Cove section. It's the northwest section of Lake Montauk.
Not seeing an aerial.
It should come up there in a second. Let me see what there it goes. It's going to switch in
There
a
we go.
second, I promise.
Yeah.
That's dramatic.
So this is Coonsfoot Cove, and it's noted in the EAF as well as the review that was prepared by the planning board. Most of Coonsfoot Cove is zoned for waterfront or resort zoning. There are a couple of residential properties on Star Island, but this is arguably the area of the highest concentration of commercial development in Lake Montauk. Most of the shoreline is bulkheaded, not all of it, and the last remaining salt marsh in Coonsfoot Cove is located partially on the property that we're talking about, south of Duryea, where the boat launch is, as well as the town-owned property to the north. So this is the highest area of commercial development. Probably the highest, or at least one of the highest concentrations of docks in the town, and certainly in Lake Montauk. The dock extension and the development of the further development of the marina appears to be consistent with zoning and appears to be consistent with the land use plans, our comprehensive plan. No adverse impacts have been identified to land use or intensity. The variances that were required were wetland setback variances exclusively for the sanitary system. The wetland boundary, the closest point of the wetlands is kind of in the middle of the property over here. The property is bulkheaded along its northern shoreline, so the wetland boundary is the bulkhead there. This is the area of the salt marsh where the wetlands come parallel to the southern portion of the improved property before turning south. The sanitary system has largely been proposed in the most conforming area on the property to wetland setbacks. There are parking spaces proposed consisting of gravel spaces along the northern property line, additional grass paving, grass parking areas in the northwestern section of the property. Drainage has been proposed to accommodate a 2-inch rainfall, and those drainage plans will be forwarded with the town engineer. I'm sorry I wasn't able to do it before tonight's meeting, but typically acceptance of the drainage plan is usually a condition of site plan approval. The dock consists of a 120-foot extension out into the surface waters of Lake Montauk. It does involve an extension onto town-owned bottomlands. The harbor master has opined that it is that it is unlikely or it won't impact navigation within the harbor. The town attorneys have written a letter to the file stating that a new lease agreement would be required. They don't object to the processing of the application, and that their letter shouldn't be construed as either support or objection to the application. So there is a small area of underwater lease now for the seawardmost portion of the dock, but a new larger lease area will be required if site plan approval is granted. The dock has been proposed to be composed of non-treated materials, which is consistent with the requirements of the Harbor Protection Overlay District, which limits the contact of chemically treated materials with surface water. And if you recall earlier in the year, the scenic easement, which had been initially proposed over the wetlands, has been proposed to extend farther west to include all but the area of the proposed sanitary system. Coonsfoot Cove is a pretty intensely used portion of the harbor, and no changes to the water quality, no adverse impacts to water quality have been identified in association with the application. So based on some of the items that I've summarized, and you have an EAF Part 2 and a Part 3 addendum that kind of elaborates on the points that I just made, the planning department has not identified any significant adverse impacts and recommends that the planning board adopt a negative declaration pursuant to SECR. If anybody has any questions about the history of the application or what's proposed, I'll do my best to answer them.
Any questions from the board, specifically for Brian, for what he just presented? No? Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I think it's pretty clear, Brian. Thank you. Does the applicant wish to be heard? Okay, all right, good. So we'll take this up. Our objective tonight is to, we have the parts 2 and part 3 narrative for the EAF in front of us. Brian has ably described what's contained in them. And I know the planning department doesn't have much of an issue, but Ava, you want to lead our conversation?
No, I've taken a look. Thank you, Brian, for the overview. I reviewed the part 2 EAF. I concur with the negative declaration. I don't have any comments further. Anyone have any other questions?
Anyone else have a comment?
I have a comment. I know you said that the water quality is not impaired by the new extension of the dock. You also said that the harbor master mentioned that it would not interfere with navigation. But to me, just from a layman's perspective, it seems that there is an intensification of that very narrow area. And I know that experts have chimed in and said that they're not going to affect negatively the navigation and such. But I just I feel compelled to ask, how is that possible, given that another 25 slips are going to be added to that very narrow area? And you said yourself that it is a very intensely used navigable portion of Lake Montauk. So I just have that thought in my head, and I think this is the right venue to just bring it up, even though others have mentioned, who know better than I do, have mentioned that it's not going to be a problem.
Well, it's a legitimate question. So Coonsfoot Cove has limited tidal flushing. That's part of the reason why it has stressed water quality. It's subject to administrative shellfish closures now because of the extent of dockage in the area. So it's never open for shellfishing, and no new impacts to the water quality within Coonsfoot have been identified as a result of this, of the dock extension. Is it intensive? Is it an intensification? Yes, there's going to be 120 feet more of dock and 25 more slips. Does that adversely change the water quality of the area? The harbor essentially is what it kind of sounds like you're asking, and we have not identified any.
Okay. Yeah, that is what I'm asking.
Okay. I thought it was a navigation question.
And also a navigation question.
Well, both, I believe you definitely have something more recently from Senior Harbor Master Tim Treadwell. I believe you also have something from maybe 5 years earlier from Ed Michaels when he had the same title, both offering that same opinion about the impacts to navigation.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No. Okay, good. Are we ready to
Make a negative declaration.
make a negative declaration on this? Is everyone ready to do that?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Jen, is Jen?
Well,
You want to talk?
Jen?
Oh,
Yes.
Jen.
Hi. Yes, negative declaration. Sounds good.
Great. Good. Just pipe up if we don't ask.
Oh, I will. I will.
Yeah, okay.
Don't you worry.
I'm sure of it. Thank you. All right, so we will bear that for next time. Good. All right, so our next matter is the Devon Yacht Club site plan, and Lisa LaCourie is representing us for the building department, for the planning department on that matter. And Mike, that's yours.
Yeah.
So Lisa, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. Good evening. For the record, my name is Lisa LaCourie here on behalf of the Planning Department, and I am reviewing with you the Devon Yacht Club site plan, special permit, variance, and natural resource special permit applications before the town and we're looking at the secret determination. So the application has been reviewed by both boards, the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board, over the past couple of years. There have been quite a number of changes that have been made to the application, and much more development of the application, as well as positive changes have been made over these past couple of years. There's been quite a lot of information submitted, and it is now at the time where we're ready to ask you to be making a secret declaration. So just by brief way of background, I believe everybody knows where the Devon Yacht Club is. It has been a longstanding establishment and institution in the town for over 100 years in Amagansett on Bendigo Road and Abrams Landing Road. And the proposal is to demolish virtually all of the buildings, save one associated with the marina, and rebuild buildings that have virtually the same function as the buildings that there are now. There are some different sizes, there are different locations, there are different setbacks, and all of that is all itemized in detail in the environmental assessments that have been presented to you. So just to talk about where we are in terms of the review process before we actually go through the EAF. This application has had a preliminary hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Zoning Board, we had brought the application to the Planning Board several times, to the point where before going in any further, we needed to get an indication, the board needed an indication as to whether the Zoning Board would be likely to be looking favorably on the application, as it will require 20 variances. So if the variances were not going to be granted, there was really no point for the planning board to be developing and moving this application further any longer. So in somewhat of a unique process, the zoning board conducted a preliminary public hearing, was an extensive review and input from the planning department, extensive review by the zoning board, in that they held a hearing, held it open, got additional information, conducted several different work sessions, and put together some preliminary recommendations to the planning board. None of that is binding, because the application is not complete before the zoning board nor the planning board until secret is complied with, until a secret declaration is made. But just in order to know whether this application might be able to move forward, the zoning board took a look at it and indicated in a memo to the planning board that it was likely to look favorably on the variances. It wasn't a unanimous decision. There wasn't really a vote made, but there was an indication. And you have all of that, and I believe you've all reviewed that with me in some prior memos and work sessions earlier this year. It was decided then, we've got an extensive environmental assessment form from the applicant with numerous attachments, that the planning board was the agency that had worked the most with this application, looking at it and actually having it go back and forth before the board for several times and making changes, that the planning board would really have the most authority and most in-depth knowledge of the application, and it would be most suitable to be the lead agency pursuant to SECRA. The application is classified as a type 1 action, which means that there needs to be coordination between all the involved agencies. The planning board requested lead agency of the other agencies and got no objection. So virtually you are the lead agency at this point. And again, before we get into the details of the environmental assessment form, after a secret declaration is made, the application will go back to the Zoning Board of Appeals for their review and for a public hearing on the variances and the natural resource special permit. So that board will be looking to see whether the application meets the standards for variances, natural resource special permit, and their review. So that is in addition to whatever SECRA conditions there might be. After the zoning board makes their determination, it will come back to the planning board also for a public hearing. There'll be a public hearing on the site plan and the special permit. And again, those are things that your board will be looking to see if there are any other conditions that you may find are required pursuant to site plan, to satisfy site plan and special permit standards for you to then be granting an approval. So while the secret is a very, very important part of this review, it is not the only review and is not the last review. So with that as a preamble, I'm going to go into a little bit of the environmental assessment forms, part 2 and 3. So the application.
Lisa, pardon me for 1 second.
Yeah.
I think maybe since really that is the discussion we're about to have is your presentation of the the elements of the part 2 and 3. I think we'll give the applicant a moment to speak and then come back and make that our discussion.
Okay, good.
You. All right, so let's do it that way.
That sounds good.
So would the applicant like to be heard?
I don't think we have anything, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
You guys have enough. You see what Mrs. LaCourty says, and we'll proceed from there.
Okay. All right. Good enough. All right. So we'll come back to us. Yeah, Lisa, please.
Okay. Can we take a look at this site plan? Put that up on the screen just to have as a background. Okay. While that's going on, we can take a look at going to page 3 of my memo, where it is identified as numbers 1 through 11 of the areas in the environmental assessment form part 2 that have been identified as having the potential for adverse environmental impacts. So just to basically review, here is the proposed site plan showing in kind of a light yellow tone where the buildings are proposed. There's 2 different types of blue. The one on kind of the right side of the page is the boat basin that's existing, that there are no changes being proposed to it. And then it looks to me they're kind of like blue-green kind of rectangles representing the 8 tennis courts. There are 8 tennis courts now. There's a proposal to keep the 8 tennis courts, resurface a couple of them, and kind of adjust the location of the others, but to keep 8 tennis courts existing, 8 tennis courts proposed at the end of the day. The parking lot is proposed to be realigned and expanded in order to have more parking on the property, to have a better flow of traffic, and to have greater setbacks to the wetlands. The property now does not have any drainage structures whatsoever, so the proposal is to put in drainage structures that comply with the town code, and also to meet the minimum depth to groundwater. And that requirement, plus the requirement for the sanitary system to have a minimum depth to groundwater, is what necessitates the requirement for bringing in a fairly large amount of fill, the importation of fill into the site. I do have an error in the EAF and in this memo that I have given you, where I have indicated a cubic yardage of fill as 4,793, but that has been reduced to 3,976. I just was referring to an earlier plan when I wrote this, so it wasn't a new change that the applicant had done. It was my making an incorrect reference. But in any event, all that's a long way of saying the project will have impacts on the land. So there will be all of that demolition and rebuilding and importation of fill and grading and installation of sanitary systems, innovative, alternative, low nitrogen sanitary systems and drainage systems. So that will have an impact on the land. is there, generally one could say that they're beneficial impacts, but on the short term, during construction and during these phases, there is the potential for impacts to the wetlands and the dunes. And the applicant has provided a construction protocol, sedimentation plan, a SWIP plan. All these plans have been put together to provide protection for the sensitive features. Are there any questions or any discussion on impacts to the land?
Yeah, I think it's important to note as we go forward here, just so it's really clear, I think Lisa did say this, but just to reiterate, is that, the focus of tonight's discussion is really on this EAF. This is what we're discussing. We're discussing this and making a secret determination, hopefully, or coming away from this meeting needing other information, so that we can make one. So we're really limiting this to the questions essentially that are contained in the EAF and the responses that were made and the narrative that was developed for as a part 3 to the EAF. So just to be clear about that. So Lisa's gonna present, and then we're gonna have a discussion and make sure that none of us has any specific questions or objections to anything that's in this. So that at the end of the process, we'll be able to determine where we stand. Okay. So as Lisa suggested, we're open to questions, comments on the impact on land. Are there any? Jen?
Yes, I wanted to make mention, and I think, Lisa, you'll probably get to this, but the impacts on the land, we have to also take into account, I think, the impact that leaving the buildings alone will have on the land. And I think that this is kind of a special case wherein it's not vacant land that's being developed. It's land that's already been developed and has been operating in its current capacity and has all of the, permits to continue to operate. Excuse me, I have a cold. To continue to operate as it is. So I think as a board, we should take that into account as we're listening to the potential negative impacts on the land in the short term.
Good comment. Thanks. Anyone else? Okay, Lisa.
Okay, so the next impact is to geologic features. The site contains what we would classify as a unique feature, a primary dune structure. Some of the existing buildings, the clubhouse, the sailing center, the bathhouse, are built somewhat into that primary dune. And so by removing them, by definition, there will be a short-term impact to the dune because you're actually going to be removing something in the dune right now. The proposal is to relocate or build new structures serving the same purposes further from that dune, and also to rebuild the dune so that it would be a continuous structure going from the north of the property to the south of the property, and that would be what we would call like the left and the right side of the property. So again, where you see the yellow, those are the buildings. That would be where the buildings would be moving back from the dune structure, and the dune would be rebuilt to a height of 10 feet elevation and revegetated. So that the site is already fairly intensely developed, and there are structures, as we said, built into the dune. Nevertheless, there still will be variances required from the setback, from the dune setback. By and large, they are all less than, or the setbacks will be increased compared to where the structures are right now. And as Jen had indicated, we are not looking at the development of a vacant site. We're looking at a heavily, intensely developed site that has certificate of occupancies for everything that is there now. And this is a proposal to rebuild what is there, with respect to the dune crest, farther than the the existing structures are. One of the issues that had come up several times during planning board discussions was the proposal for a deck to host the flag. And because that the walkway across the dune does not have minimum dune setbacks because it's considered a coastal structure, but the deck to host the flag does not meet that requirement. So over the review for several years now, the applicant has continued to reduce the size of it. And here again, I have I'll call it a typo rather than an error. I had indicated that the applicant has reduced the size of the deck to 175 square feet, the smallest that could still function. That is off by an order of magnitude. It is down to 17.5 square feet for the deck. So that is really a lot smaller than had been originally proposed. The impact of having a deck in that location on the dune of that size is greatly reduced from, and the potential impacts not as much of a concern as when the project first came in. I think that covers the impacts on geologic features. Any questions?
Anyone? Board members? Nope.
Nope.
Good, Lisa.
Okay, so now impacts to surface and groundwater. So the site has a number of very sensitive environmental features. There's an extensive wetland system across the, I guess it's the western side, parallel to Bendigo Road. That area where you don't see any of the colors because that's where the wetlands are and that's where the wetlands are going to continue to be. One of the positive features of this application is that currently there is a staff residence parking area and associated septic system in that little area that is green in the middle of that wetland area. That's all that's gray on either side. And that is proposed, that bisects the existing wetlands. It does not have, the septic system is something like 4 feet away from the wetlands. Calling it a septic system is an exaggeration. It is probably a cesspool sitting in the groundwater table. And all of that is proposed to be removed. And the staff housing is proposed to be located inland, away from the wetlands. There's that little yellow rectangle surrounded by green just to the north or higher up on the site plan. So that is taking what is an existing impact to the wetlands and reducing it in a significant fashion. I mentioned that the groundwater, the entire site has very shallow depth to groundwater, less than 3.5 feet, most of the site. And so in order to get the drainage structures and the IA sanitary structures to meet the minimum depth to groundwater, fill is proposed to be brought in. So in order you can have that, the minimum separation so that the septic systems are not sitting in the groundwater, which they are doing right now, and that there'll be some soil to be filtering the effluent before it hits the groundwater. So again, we've got a couple of things that are existing conditions that this application is improving on by putting in up-to-date sanitary systems, increasing the depth to the groundwater, increasing the setback to the wetlands compared to the existing structures. However, there still will be a number of variances from the wetlands that will be required. And as with the dune setbacks, these setbacks are increased by comparison to the existing structures. There'll be also a large amount of revegetation that is proposed, some in the area that where the staff housing is, that the revegetation proposed will be done in order to encourage and facilitate the reconnection of the wetlands in that area, and other areas that have been cleared or proposed to be revegetated as well, on the order of more than an acre of land. All of these things then making the impact to the surface waters, the wetlands, and the groundwaters less comparatively to what there is now.
Okay. All right, good. Any comments on impacts on surface water and on groundwater?
Well, restoring the wetland, removing the staff housing is another example of how this is a positive, overall, generally positive application for the area. So you remove the staff housing and the land bridge and the cesspool. What are the protocols for removing the cesspool that is? I mean, I've walked this site. It's right in the wetland.
Yes, well, the Suffolk County Department of Health Services has standards for how sanitary systems should be abandoned, and the application is proposing to comply with all of those standards.
All right. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, flooding. The site is within quite a large number of zones and classifications pertaining to flooding. It's in the FEMA zones where the proposed development is in the AE elevation 10. There's a little bit of one of the tennis courts in flood zone X, but the clubhouse, the bathhouse, and the sailing center are all in portion seaward of what's called the LIMWA zone, the limit of moderate wave action. And by being in that zone, FEMA has recommended or found that there's a higher risk of wave damage to buildings that are seaward of that zone. And so the FEMA regulations recommend that buildings in those areas comply with velocity zone standards, which is the highest standard for building in any sort of FEMA zone. So the application does propose to meet those standards for those buildings. That's the clubhouse, the sailing center, the bathhouse that are partially seaward of the LIMWA zone. And as a result, so not only will their first floor meet those standards, but that also pertains to construction standards, which will include driving pilings, and they're proposing timber piles for supporting the foundations of each of those buildings. And just by way of comparison, none of the existing buildings meet the FEMA standards in terms of construction standards or in terms of minimum first floor elevations. The property is also within the town coastal erosion hazard overlay district zones 2 and 4, and the standards for those, the recommendations for those are all proposed to be met. There has been a concern that although the town reports both the local waterfront revitalization plan and the CARP plans, the Coastal Assessment and Resiliency Plan, both evaluated the shoreline townwide, and neither of those plans found this property in an area of eroding shoreline or very hazardous in those terms. Found it to be relatively stable. That was also supported by reports that the applicant submitted. Nevertheless, we always are looking towards the concern of sea level rise townwide. And as this facility has already been in existence for 100 years, and we hope they have another 100 years and more in front of them. Perhaps a rather longer time frame than many other structures, a simple single-family residence structure that the zoning board perhaps may be looking at. We think there's perhaps a longer time horizon that should be looked at in looking at the new buildings here and anticipating that sea level rise could have an impact on the property and on the buildings. And we raised that concern to the applicant, and they worked with their architect and engineer and have determined that the buildings would be able to be elevated sometime in the future if sea level rise made that condition something that should be considered in the future. That's also something that has come about through the extensive review that's gone on with this application over the years. We've also talked about how the project is proposing to rebuild and restore the existing dune. That will also help provide more protection, flood protection, natural flood protection, as that's what dunes function to do. The project of all of the buildings are seaward of the coastal erosion hazard line. That is a boundary that has been determined by the Department of Environmental Conservation, and therefore the project will need variances from those standards before the DEC. The applicant is aware of this. They have developed a plan keeping those standards in mind, and I believe they have provided us with informal feedback from the DEC indicating that the project is likely to obtain the variances from the CEHA standards.
Okay.
So I believe that covers flooding.
Any comments from the board on the answers to the flooding related questions? So I think the next several areas in the EAF so really have, there are no impacts that were noted. Is that right? Lisa, impacts on air, plants and animals, and ag resources?
Right. Yeah, sometimes I gave a narrative, even if it was a no, just to explain why it was a no. So I'll go by your guidance, Chairman, as to which of these, which one you'd like me to discuss any further.
Yeah, I don't think we need to discuss those. I think we can move on to aesthetic resources, if everyone's agreeable to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so aesthetic resources has been something the planning board has been reviewing very carefully, has also asked the architectural review board for input on the potential impacts to aesthetic resources. This site is already visible from the adjoining public beach and from across Gardner's Bay. The proposal is to rebuild buildings in the similar style, the architectural style that the buildings already are constructed at. And that style somewhat characterizes the Devon area. So the architecture is consistent with what there already is there now. There has been a kind of a perennial issue over whether the increased height in the buildings, particularly the clubhouse, might have an adverse impact on the aesthetic resources. Remember, in order to meet the FEMA standards, the buildings are going to have to be starting at a higher elevation. And then also, this is more of a two-story building than there is now. I would characterize the existing clubhouse as maybe 1.5 story. This is more of a 2-story. Nonetheless, it complies with the height requirements of the town code as measured from natural grade. So it it complies in that way. The board has asked for drawings, and there have been 3D drawings, visuals, showing also with the planting plan what the structures, what the view of the structures may be over in the first year and 5 years and 10 years and 25 years, showing that with the planting that's proposed, how any sort of view of these buildings will be softened from the beginning of the construction, but even more so over the years. The clubhouse will require a front yard setback from Abrams Landing Road. The property has 2 front yards, so Abrams Landing is considered a front yard. The clubhouse doesn't meet the front yard setbacks from Abrams Landing. The existing clubhouse is considerably closer than where the proposed one is. And another mitigating factor is the right-of-way of Abrams Landing Road is rather wide in that area, and there is some vegetation there. So when you look at the impact from the beach area and the roadway, it's actually, there's a lot larger of a setback from the paved roadway than what from the property line would indicate. So it sounds like a rather large setback variance, but in actuality, from what you're seeing, it is not quite as large. Yeah. This will also go back to the Architectural Review Board for their review. So it doesn't all have to be decided under the EAF.
Yeah, important to note that. All right, so I think we have some comments on this category.
Well, so it's more of a question, and it has to do with the Architectural Review Board. Obviously, as Lisa said, this issue is going to be adjudicated or reviewed by the Architectural Review Board, and they'll make a decision as to what's proper and what's not. How does that, since it has a large impact on this form, how does that affect our decision today on whether to make a positive deck or a negative deck?
Well, let me just take a step. Yeah.
It's not only this issue, but other issues as well, like the variances, the setback variances, all of those things that are going to be reviewed by the zoning board. So if they have these large impacts as stipulated on this form, how do we answer that? How does that affect our decision today on what kind of decision we make?
Lisa, Eric, I'm going to take a crack at it, okay?
Sure.
You may need to jump in and correct me. My understanding is that we are really looking at all of these factors and determining whether, on balance, we feel as though the impacts, positive or negative, all have been identified adequately, and that we feel comfortable moving ahead. This is not, by any means, this is not even we approve the project. This is really, we have another opportunity to do a formal site review after the ZBA has their public hearing, and it comes back to us for site review and for our public hearing. So there's plenty of opportunity to kind of look at details again like this and the input of other involved agencies.
I understand that part of this. You stated it very well. However, I think at the beginning of this procedure, we said that we either make a positive deck or a negative deck. We also might request some items to be further moderated by the applicant in order for us to make that decision. You did say that at the beginning.
Yeah, well, we might ask for more information. Yeah. Waiting on another board.
So asking for more information, I guess, is not the same as.
I don't think. Are you thinking that we should get a? You're suggesting that we might want to get.
No, I believe especially in this case, I think we have plenty of information with regard to the graphics that they've submitted, and we know what it's going to look like. Right. There's no change. There's nothing missing there. So if that's the only thing that we're looking for, then I think we're good. ask for anything.
Right. And the ARBs,
As far as deciding whether it's proper or not, that's a decision the ARB.
right. And, and their purview is somewhat limited, so,
Okay.
yeah. Any other thoughts about aesthetics? Okay. You want to move on to historic and archaeological resources, Lisa?
Sure. So in terms of archaeological resources, there is a state map that indicates in general terms where there's a potential for archaeological significance. And this virtually the entire coastline is an area where there could have been indigenous activity. So it lights up. So this area shows up on the state map. When the planning department reviewed this application with the planning board over the past couple of years, we've indicated our belief that the site has already been heavily disturbed and the likelihood of finding anything intact of significance is slim. So we have not recommended that there be further archaeological investigation. The applicant may, in pursuing the state permits, if one of the state agencies says you need to do it, well, that's up to another agency, but it has not been our recommendation to ask for further archaeological investigation on such a disturbed site. In terms of historic resources, the area is Devon Yacht Club is in the vicinity of the Devon Colony. The Devon Colony was identified in the 1990 and 1991 historic reports conducted for the town by Robert Hefner Association, identifying areas that may have hold together as a historic district, have significance for that. He inventoried the entire town. He found that the 4 houses that are in this vicinity, called the Devon Colony, at that time had met the criteria for being a historic district. The town has not moved forward on making that an historic district. This site is, while it's got the same name, it is not contiguous, it is not abutting, it is not adjacent to it. The townwide archaeological, historic study did indicate that this site could not be investigated at that time to determine historic significance. There is really way too much that would need to be done, and they did not have access to it. So the site has not been identified as having historic significance.
Okay. Do any board members have any comments on historic and archaeological resources? No? Okay. All right, I think we're down to the last 2 categories, if I'm not mistaken. Transportation, impact on transportation.
Okay, so the project, as I've mentioned several times, will involve the importation of a large amount of fill. In my memo on page 3, I have the wrong figure for the amount, and that is higher than, where's my corrected sheet? I'm sorry, it's about 1,000. I'm sorry. Okay. So just to correct what is written, the proposal is to use 38 cubic yard trucks to bring in the fill, and it would be importing 3,976 cubic yards, which would involve 105 truck trips one way or 210 trips round trip. And during phase 1, it would be 55 truck trips, and phase 2, it would be 50 trips. So they wouldn't all be, there's a year between them, and the construction is proposed for the off-season, so not as much impact on the truck traffic. There had been some concern during the review of the project as to whether these truck trips would have impacts on local roads. We hadn't made any determination one way or another. We were consulting with the consulting engineer and also with the highway superintendent, with the possibility of, considering whether there should be a bond put up by the applicant to cover the off chance that there are any sort of adverse impacts to the roads by the truck traffic.
Are there any comments on the transportation category?
I would like to hear from Eric, and I would like just a little history on how a bond put on the wear and tear of a road has been applied in East Hampton town.
Sure. So, I can't give you a full and comprehensive history, but it is standard practice for the planning board as a condition of approval, and the zoning board in certain instances, particularly where you have fill or sand being carted for, dune restorations. It's been standard, I would say, in unique circumstances to require bonds. Basically, the idea here is that all of that truck traffic might tear up the road and roadways adjacent to the site. A bond would be established to cover the cost of repair if the applicant doesn't do it themselves upon completion of the work. So it's something that's been required actually in some relatively small subdivisions. There's one in particular I remember called Wadnall. That was up by the Montauk Manor in Montauk. A bond was required as a condition of approval to ensure that after work was completed, in that case, I should say, installing a common driveway, that the road was in fine shape. Generally, what you would do is have the town engineer identify whether or not that is a recommendation first, and then have them identify, what would be the cost of repairing roadways immediately adjacent to the site, and then establish that as the bond. That's basically the way the board has done it in the past. It's something that's unique in that most of the site plans that you see, certainly you don't require them, but it's standard in the sense that it is something that the board has required on numerous occasions in the past. And this being a very large application, and as Lisa just went over, necessitating many truck trips to bring the requisite materials to the site, it's something that the board might want to consider. Again, though, building on what was said before, right now you're reviewing the EAF Part 2 and 3. This still has to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for multiple variances and a natural resources special permit. They may require that as a condition. And then again, the planning board has yet to deem this complete and schedule it for their own public hearing. It's something that you could condition, further along in the process. So
we don't have to do it tonight.
Exactly.
Okay.
So hopefully that's good background.
Thank you.
I'll make a comment on that same topic, and I think it is important that we, consult with the engineer and determine, what's an appropriate bond for this, because I do think it's important in this neighborhood to make sure the roads are protected. But that's just a comment for the future, right? We can sort of deal with that kind of down the road, as Eric is saying. Anyone else have any other comments on this issue? Okay. So I think our last category, Lisa, is noise, odor, and light. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yes. So one of the aspects is
Sorry, I don't want to skip over number 17 because it was checked off as a no. So you may
where are we looking?
Number 17, consistency with community.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. There's,
So I have to read.
yeah, gotcha. Okay, go ahead, Lisa.
I'll do that after the noise, odor, and light. So starting with light, the applicant has come in with a lighting plan that shows that all light will be contained on site. No odors to be produced off site, whatever, there's kitchen, obviously. And noise is the one potential impact. And as I earlier mentioned, the project is going to involve pile driving for to meet the construction standards in a velocity zone and putting in timber piles. The applicant initially proposed to go within a 300-foot perimeter of the site to go to all the neighboring properties and inform them of this and pretty much look at the condition of the buildings before any sort of the driving goes on. We had recommended going to 500 feet and they have agreed. So that is a necessary part of the project in order to meet the standards for being in this type of a flood zone. So it will be short-term impacts. They will be notifying the neighbors within 500 feet of it when this is going to occur. It will be in the quote-unquote off-season, and they've expanded the area that they will be informing the people of this disturbance too.
Okay.
Great.
Any comments on that category?
No.
That's good. All right, so Lou, you'd like to talk about one where the answer had been no impacts, consistency with community character?
Yeah, and more specifically, item C. So this is consistent with community plans. Item C says, the proposed action is inconsistent with local land use plans or zoning regulations. So item C.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're on community plans, not character, 17, okay.
So I think it does, I think it is inconsistent with zoning regulations. I mean, just the fact that there are 20 variances that are needed for this project illustrates that it's not consistent with zoning regulations. And I also would like to take issue with regard to this point. I believe this is a narrative that was submitted by the applicant's attorney or some other agent, where he says in the narrative, he or she, the only fair way to undertake the environmental evaluation of this project is to do so in the context of considering what currently exists on the site to assess the impacts of what is being proposed comparatively against the environmental impacts of the current conditions. So basically they're saying, compare what's there now with the plan that they have for the property. And if you do that, you're going to see that you're better off with the plan that they're proposing rather than just leaving it the way it is, which I agree with. However, I don't think that's the only way to look at this. Another way to look at this is compare what they're proposing with another plan, which is more restrictive, less coverage, more minor in nature than what they're proposing. So I think with regard to that item C, perhaps, and I know one of the objectives of doing SECRA is for the applicant and for the planning board to review alternatives to what different issues on different points. So why couldn't we ask for an alternative project plan for us to consider within the SECRA review based on that argument?
I don't want to speak for the applicant, but the applicant seems to be pretty steadfast in their plan, their proposal. And it's like they'll keep it as is, for the foreseeable future, right? Which is, I think, detrimental to the ecology of that whole area. That's what's in the back of my head.
But Michael.
And I appreciate you don't.
If every applicant came before us and said, listen, this is the plan we have. You either take it or leave it.
But we weigh that, right? And from my early days on this board, we've weighed that. Like how much does the benefit outweigh the disturbance? Right, that's like our job.
Let's remember what we're doing here. I don't want to get too far afield. We do have, this is not us, approving the project. This is not us modifying the project in any way.
So this
in
is
specific.
yeah.
This is simply to say, do we understand the impacts? And it doesn't mean that we can't ask for some modifications down the line, right? And I think the only thing that's relevant to this discussion, it seems to me, is do we want to note this as moderate to large impact, that their proposed action is not consistent with local land use plans?
Yeah, at the very least, I believe we should.
Yeah, I don't know if that particular phrase captures what you're saying.
Do you think that this is consistent with zoning regulations?
It's zoned residential and it's a yacht club and
But zoning regulations have particular setback regulations.
Yeah.
They are significantly in violation by substantial amounts of
Right,
those, requiring 20 variances. Now, that to me is not consistent with zoning regulations.
all right, but let's remember that, the current site is pre-existing as it is, right?
Yeah.
So
Site's developed.
the current site is
We're looking
developed.
at a vacant, like Jen said earlier, we're not looking at a vacant property.
Yeah.
I think that would be a different story.
So I want to ask Lisa and Eric for their opinion that if the board kind of agrees to make a point about this, how might we do it in this context, right? I don't know that 17C is exactly necessarily what's being driven at here.
Excuse me, guys, can I make one comment with regard to Lou's?
Yeah, go ahead, Jen. Yeah.
So Lou, I do see what you're saying, but I feel like this is the plan that the applicant has come up with. And the applicant, from my understanding, I have not been on this board for more than a year and a half, but my understanding is the applicant has been receptive to making changes. And I do think that the plan before us is much better than what's there now. But in a broader sense, not to get too into the weeds, in a broader sense, if we say, no, we don't like this application and this plan, doesn't it set us up? I mean, where will that sort of lead this board in a general sense? Then other applications kind of become subject to this determination on our part. We'll come back with something else. I mean, I do understand that they do need 20 variances, and that's a huge amount of variances. I totally get that, but I just think that in this case, this is what's there. I don't think it's a take it or leave it kind of thing, but if we don't approve it, the reality is it's going to stay.
But we know we're not anywhere near approving.
We're not approving or this.
No, I know, but I'm just kind of saying for a theoretical
And I
thing.
thought that
Probably not the time, but as a theoretical.
secret review, you ask for alternatives. You don't just say, this is the plan. You ask for alternatives. Now, the applicant may submit those alternatives and say, although we're submitting these alternatives, we're really not, we don't want to go down that path with these alternatives. But it is a secret review is a review of alternatives. Here, we're not getting any. We're just getting one. So
Well, I would object to that, but I think this whole process is one in which the project has been continually refined as we've asked for further input.
Trimming
further
the
changes.
forest is not alternative.
All right. I think I would like Lisa and Eric to opine on how we capture this thought in this context, right? I mean, I understand what Lou is saying. Is that something that needs to be captured at this point? Or is it something that's
I could
in
take
the natural course of events?
I'll take a stab at it first, which is just looking at that question, is the proposal consistent with local land use plans? Well, yeah, it is in the comprehensive plan, talked about water dependent uses, keeping them on the waterfront, making sure that they're an important part of the community and how it operates. There's nothing in the comprehensive plan or any of the other plans, the coastal, the CART plan, the other things that says that this project should go away. It says, or that this project is inconsistent. This project right now, the way that it exists right now is more inconsistent with the zoning than what the proposal is, right? So you could say the existing site project is inconsistent with the zoning regulations, which it is, right? It would need more than 20 variances to build what's there now. And you wouldn't be able to do a lot of those things. You wouldn't be able to put in septic systems that don't work that way. You wouldn't be able to have a site with no drainage. You wouldn't be able to do any of those things. That site, the way it exists, you would not be able to build it. So to answer their question, to say, okay, how would you answer it? The existing site doesn't meet the zoning regulations. So there is something to be looking at it comparatively. Are you making it less conforming or more conforming? But it's not strictly that. These are issues for the zoning board, right? To be looking at the variance standards. And that's why before we got it to this point where we were putting together a draft secret determination, we said, let's hear from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Is this likely to meet those variance standards? And by saying yes, they're basically saying it meets zoning. So this hasn't been a strictly take it or leave it application. It's been reviewed many times over 2 to 3 years. I think the applicant began with doing some other public work before that. And there have been many changes that have been made over the time. So even if you were to answer this question, yes, it could have a moderate to large impact because it's inconsistent with zoning regulations. It would go to the zoning board. Should the zoning board grant the variances, it meets the zoning standards. So if you're looking for other alternatives, what you need to do is identify how this plan is harmful to the environment and what type of an alternative would be less harmful. That's really what you need to focus on. So we need to say what is an unacceptable impact to the environment that then an alternative could help us address.
Right.
Okay, just one last comment because I don't want to drag this on. It seems to me that we're sort of setting, to my mind, sort of setting a precedent where an applicant comes in, they have a plan, they can tweak it here and there if we ask them to, but that's their plan, and we have absolutely no recourse to get alternative, improved plans than what they've submitted. And in this case, what I'm talking about is less coverage, less GFA, more permeable land surface, less setbacks to wetlands, that kind of thing. So if you have less number of buildings or smaller buildings, less tennis courts, I'm not suggesting that I'm just throwing out examples. Those are alternatives. We're not getting any of that. We're only getting the initial plan that they came in with that was tweaked here and there and along the way. That's all I just want to say.
I think the tweaks have been pretty substantial. I haven't been on this for very long, but it seems like the tweaks have been pretty substantial with a small footprint to work.
Yeah, I know it's very difficult to not get into the specific merits, of the proposal. But I do think that we have an opportunity for some of the kinds of things you're talking about in the site plan review process. I would suggest that we leave this as it is.
Okay.
If everyone else is okay with that. And take this up as we go along. Okay. All right, Lisa, thank you. That was a lot, but it was very helpful hopefully for everyone listening. And certainly for us, we've reviewed this many times, but it was great to have it all in this condensed format. So thank you very, very much. Before we turn this, I'm going to turn this over to Michael, who's committee on this project.
I have nothing more to say.
All right, well, you might. I just want to go, I do want to just say, as I said earlier, that this is really not, our making a secret determination is really just a step in the process, and it's important for us to make one in order for the process to move forward to back to the ZBA again, as we talked about earlier. And this is really about us looking at this project in balance and determining whether or not we feel like, the impacts have all been identified adequately and that we feel comfortable with them, and knowing that we have an opportunity to do a formal site plan review down the line. So with that.
A negative declaration does not mean we approve this. It's just a negative declaration. And this says, I've had this from the very start, from however long ago it has been. And I've said this before too, every meeting, whether it's the ZBA, the planning board, or a CAC, they have made an improvement of some kind to this application. Mm-hmm. And we might be at the point of a diminishing returns where there's how much more improvement can you make? So that's all I have to say on this.
Bruce, what do you have to say?
I've got nothing further to add.
Okay. How do you feel about a negative declaration?
I support it.
Okay. Jen?
I agree. I think negative declaration is the way to go. Yeah. And I agree with everything Michael just said about all the improvements and changes that have been made based on everybody's comments.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Jen. Ava?
I certainly haven't been on this nearly as long as Michael or anyone else at the table, but I'm very familiar with the site. I read through everything, and I agree. I'm in favor of the negative declaration.
Okay.
I'll also vote for negative declaration.
Okay, great. All right. Great conversation, everybody. Thank you very much. And I just want to say that, this is a very complicated application, as you all know. It's taken a long time for us to get to this point, but it's also a hugely important project for the town. And it is one that I have said before, and I think it's true, but it's a model for other organizations in town to really look toward as we all think more about rising sea level and other environmental issues that are coming down the pike. So I like that. But it's also been a very unusual process, this sort of soft public hearing that happened, I'll call it soft public hearing that happened with the ZBA and their informal kind of opinion prior to this discussion is a little bit unusual too. But I do agree that every time that we've had a discussion about this, you've been very responsive. You've come back with alternatives for specific elements of the plan that have made it much, much better. And I think what we actually, because one of the things we're really looking at is, do we actually need to move to an EIS before we make any declaration or not? And I think we almost have one because we've spent so much time on this project, and you guys have provided so much information, just for tonight, for example, right? Staples is out of paper, I think, after this. So I would also say that we are, my opinion is that we're ready to make a negative declaration and not go for an EIS and move the process forward. Excellent. It sounds like we're, in tune on that. So that is how we end the discussion. Am I missing anything, Lisa, Eric?
You should, I think it's a little bit of a matter of formality, but you should make a motion to make a negative declaration.
Okay. Would you like to make that motion?
I make a motion to make a negative declaration on this application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Passed and carried.
We didn't do that on the first one. So we have done that on the first one?
Maybe. Our lawyer will tell us if we have to do that.
This was a big one. Though.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So just one procedural thing. I will be making those corrections to the EAF for those points about the amount of fill and the size of the flag deck. And then all of that gets routed and everything as what a top one action should do.
Okay, good. Thanks for pointing that out. And thanks for all your hard work on this, Lisa. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, if we have any energy left here, let's move on. Let's see, you have the agenda right in front of you there. Oh, Bruce.
Yep.
Okay,
I'm going to sign off. Good night.
thanks, Lisa.
Did you go ahead and have dinner?
All right, so Hubbard is next, and that is Sarah, that's you, and Bruce. And the applicant is here for Hubbard, Joel, right? Yeah.
Alrighty, Sarah Lewis for the Planning Department. So this is a site plan resubmission for Hubbard, formerly Naturally Good Food Cafe. It's located on 38 South Etna Avenue in Montauk. The lot is zoned as central business with the most recent certificate of occupancy issued in 2000. And that was for a retail building with an apartment above. The apartment had a screened-in porch, which has since been enclosed with the work done around 2003. The site plan was, a site plan was submitted in 2003. However, it was missing some elements. A site plan application for these improvements was resubmitted in July of this year. The applicant is now seeking to legalize the installation of windows that replace screens for a second floor exterior porch. I can show the plans up here. So it's for this area, 363 square feet. As mentioned, it was previously screened and is now windows. This project is a type 2 action pursuant to SECRA, meaning it is not subject to additional review. The change is considered minor and there are no expected impacts to coverage, parking, or the sanitary system. There are no proposed exterior improvements or new structures as part of this application at this time. The planning department has no objections to enclosing the second story porch. It should be noted by the applicant that any additional structures, additions to existing buildings, or other changes on site that are not approved under the most recent CO will need to be removed or receive the necessary approvals. The planning department has reviewed the submission and notes that the submission does not clearly illustrate the area to be enclosed and does not include an updated survey. But given the minor nature of this proposed project, the fact that the proposed changes are interior, and that the board has waived site plan elements for similar applications, the planning department finds the omission acceptable, and the board should determine if it agrees. If the board agrees that the omissions are acceptable, the board should decide if the proposal is complete and ready for public hearing. Are there any questions?
Anyone? Thank you, Sarah. Joel, would you like to be heard?
Evening, Joel Halsey. I don't really have anything to add to that. I'd just like to address, it is just a small 363 square foot enclosure. It used to be a knee wall around a covered porch on it was the old naturally good building. At one point they took the screens out and replaced it with windows, and that's what we're trying to legalize. So simple as that.
Okay. Bruce.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think this is very simple. 363 square feet, no increase in the footprint. No increase in anything exterior except aesthetics. It was under a roof to begin with, so I don't have a problem with it. Doesn't trigger septic, doesn't trigger GFA, everything's all within the acceptable limits, so
Okay. How about the point about potentially waiving the
public hearing?
now waiving the a site plan, you know, a current
Site plan or survey?
current survey.
But we haven't got an updated survey. Was there one in 2003?
There's one from 2003. If you want, I have that to pull up. I think it's also worth noting that, you know, when they go to get their CO, they'll have to get an as-built survey.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
So I think that's worth noting. But
I think we can probably let that go.
Yeah, but I mean, the only reason I bring it up, and I don't know if anyone else has any opinions about this, but if, you know, if there is something else that's happened, you know, since so much time has gone by since this was originally done, if there's something else there that would require review, you know, and it'll come out ultimately in the CO anyway, right? But still, Joel, do you want to comment on that?
I believe we did send an updated survey. I actually had the survey updated to actually outline the portion of the building that had the previous, screen porch. I don't have a copy. I didn't bring all my files with me. Unfortunately, that I don't have because this file is big. Let me check over there, but there should be a survey on file.
We didn't receive one in our packets.
There wasn't anything in the packet.
Okay, sorry about that. I do have an updated survey that shows, that was what they required currently, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
Excellent.
I will find one. I'll submit that to the file. Nothing's really changed on the property except for the building. Well, and that hasn't even changed. It's just the windows.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, that was the only concern I had.
Yeah, I agree.
If there's anything else on the site, so if you do have a current survey, we'd like to see it. Any other comments, or should I just go to the questions? Okay. So do we, as planning board, agree with the planning department's recommendation to waive the item required by town code 255-6-50, which is the site plan, and we're agreeing, we're going to get one.
We're going to get one.
Correct, Joel?
Yes.
Okay. Does the planning board find the proposal complete and ready for a public hearing?
Is it required to have a public hearing?
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
it is. Sarah, is it?
yeah, it has habitable space. So my understanding, it has habitable space. So my understanding is that it needs one. Eric, correct me if I'm wrong.
All right.
Exactly
Are we
correct.
all- That's, all right, thank you, Eric. Does everyone's good with that?
Yeah.
Ready for public hearing? Okay, once we get the site plan. Okay, thanks. All right, I think Franzetti is next. Are you standing?
I'll be covering that for Chris Stecker.
Okay, thanks, Eric. And that, Jen, that's you. Go
That's
ahead.
me. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think.
Oh, and just, I'm sorry, I keep not asking this applicant.
There it is, yeah.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Great. So hopefully you should be able to see my screen now, and you'll see a sort of far aerial of the property in Montauk. This is a closer aerial, and then this is the minor subdivision map. So basically, this should be pretty brief, certainly more brief than the last or application before last. Public hearing was held on August 13th. We received no comments from the public. The fire marshal has signed off on the minor subdivision, and provided the board agrees, the application is ready for approval with the sub-waiver map, which you see in front of you, noted in the memorandum.
No.
Okay, any other comments from anybody? Jen, anything to add?
The applicant wish to be heard at all, or is that first?
No, okay.
All good, Jen.
I guess
Okay.
we're all good.
Yeah. I'm all good to approve this. We just saw it 2 weeks ago. Nobody on the public hearing. I'm good.
Everybody agree with Jen? We all good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we don't have a resolution tonight, but we will next time. Good. Thanks, Rick.
Okay.
All right. On to the next, which is Elite Towers at Springs Fire Department. And that would be Eric again and Reed.
Let me share the landscaping and screening plan that the applicant submitted. So that was really the main outstanding issue the last time the board reviewed this. If you recall, the applicants were proposing a lone row of 6-foot-tall evergreen screening in the form of arborvitaes. They've augmented that by adding another row to create what is essentially sort of 2 staggered rows of 6-foot-tall evergreen screening, this time adding cryptomeria. And then they're also proposing to add another 5 of those plants adjacent to the tower itself. So the board should determine if this is acceptable. The code does require, otherwise require screening of the entire site, so around the perimeter of it. However, the code also empowers the board to waive that requirement. I don't know that there's any benefit to screening out the Springs Fire Department property in its entirety, and I don't think the board was going down that road at the time of the last review. But the applicants have submitted this additional screening. Since the date of the memo, they also submitted updated photo simulations of this area. So what you see now in front of you is the site as it exists in the rough location of where the equipment area would be and the pole itself. And then you can see here a visual rendering of what that would look like. So the board should determine if that additional landscaping is acceptable. The other outstanding issue was that the EAF Part 1 needed to be amended. The applicants have amended it as directed by the board and the planning department. Provided the board also finds that acceptable, we will begin the process of initiating lead agency for the planning board. We needed a complete EAF Part 1 to establish lead agency. We can do that now. The board, just to let the board and the applicants know, the other involved agencies have 30 days to respond to that. If they respond sooner, the planning department will react sooner, but usually they take the 30 days. What we will do is at the end of that referral period, have an EAF Part 2 and 3 ready for the planning board to consider at a future meeting. And then we can also schedule the matter for a public hearing. That is, of course, provided the board is okay with the screening. The ARB reviewed this as they're required under the code to send comments to the town board. We do now have a copy of formal written comments from the ARB. Basically, everything they said was, I shouldn't even say basically, everything they said was supportive of the application as it's currently proposed, including the coloration of the tower. So basically, in conclusion, the planning board should discuss whether or not the additional landscaping and screening is sufficient, and also if the EAF Part 1 is acceptable, in which case we'll begin initiating the process to establish lead agency. There are other matters that are code required as far as a final formal recommendation from planning department staff as to whether or not to approve this. There are unique conditions and requirements, this being a wireless application. We'll provide those when NEAF Part 2 and 3 is prepared and the board is set to consider a negative declaration. So that's basically it.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Applicant obviously wishes to be heard.
I think I already was. Good evening, Greg Alvarez, a monologue group, Garden City, New York, here on behalf of the applicants. We just wanted to say that hopefully we have heard properly in terms of the direction from last time with the landscaping and as Eric mentioned, believe we've addressed all of the issues on the EAF as well. So at this time, we entertain it for your review and opinion, and hopefully if we are in order, hopefully are on that path then for a public hearing. So thank you very much for the review.
Okay, thanks. Reed.
Yeah, so we're at the
Chairman, I'd like to just forward
This is not a public hearing, Rick. This is not a public hearing.
let the applicant's attorney speak to you.
Pardon me?
Applicant's attorney has spoken to you. I represent.
The process is our planning department provides their analysis. The applicant is asked to speak. The board then
And maybe it's
discusses.
just cut out of the process?
We do, you know very well from years of doing this that we don't typically allow comment from anyone
You're trying
else.
to make a decision on whether, you're trying to make a decision on your secret. We're not going to be allowed to comment before you make that decision?
We are making a decision tonight whether or not we are going to
Yeah, and there's
ask
no
for
public
lead
hearing on
agency.
this. There's no public hearing on this. So I don't get to talk if I don't get to address you now. I'm not going to take much of your time.
No public
I
hearing
have
on
very
this?
little to say,
Well,
but I think I should be able to say something.
There is, no?
there will ultimately be a public hearing. Is that not right, Eric?
correct.
There will be a public hearing, yes.
Yes, but after you've made your secret determination.
That's correct.
Rick,
Just like
you're a piece of work, I gotta tell you. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes,
That's all I
and
need.
that is it. And this is the last time it's gonna happen, okay? Seriously.
Richard Whalen, attorney for, just to be clear, because this came up in the applicant's letter, I represent David Kelly and Nicola Barbara. Their properties are less than 600 feet away from the proposed new tower location. And they are supported by other residents of Talmadge Farm Lane. Those are my clients. My comment is very simple. The board made a secret determination in July 2020 to require a DEIS. You actually had a scoping outline in August of 2021. And at that time, you identified 5 areas that you felt had the potential for significant adverse impacts. Those affected aesthetics, historic character, potential impacts on human health, community character, and inconsistency with local plans. So we don't think anything has changed other than the applicant has withdrawn the application and resubmitted it. And frankly, they had an approved scoping outline in September 2021. That's 4 years ago. If they had simply proceeded to submit a DIS in accordance with what you determined, the board itself determined, this process would probably be done already. So that's my comment. I think that you should adhere to your prior decision and should require a DIS. Thank you.
Okay, Rick. I don't want this to become a debate.
No. We stand on our written submission in terms of our description as to why it was more than justified in terms of the withdrawal and resubmission. And I'll leave it at that and leave it to the board to consider. Thank you.
Okay. Eric, do you have any comments on that, on this
Nothing
issue?
additional, unless the board has specific questions.
Okay. All right. Reed.
So we're nearing the end of this process. I want to thank the applicant for their cooperation. They've done everything that we've asked them to do. I think the screening is adequate. Again, this is at the rear of the property, but I thought it was important to have some screening, and you've complied with that. I'm comfortable with us establishing lead agency status. I am comfortable supporting negative declaration on SECRA, and I think we're ready to schedule this for a public hearing.
Okay, good. Any other thoughts? Any other comments? Jen, anything?
I agree with Reed.
Okay.
Just to be clear, the matter in front of the board to get us to that point is whether or not you find the screening acceptable or whether or not there are any other changes that need to be made. The EAF Part 1 will send out. We're not ready to make a negative declaration yet. That is dependent upon responses we get from the involved agencies, but provided they don't object to it, then it is the intention of the planning department to prepare an EAF Part 2 and 3 and bring that back to the planning board for their review and consideration for a secret declaration at a subsequent meeting.
Thank you for the clarification, Eric. So we'll go to the questions then. Does the planning board find the screening of the equipment area acceptable?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, so the thing that we're our objective is to then go ahead and begin the process of establishing lead agency, all right? And move forward to a public hearing once lead agency has been established, which will take a little bit of time, and then there will be a public hearing. And there will be an opportunity for neighbors and others to be heard. So, do we have a motion to begin the process to establish lead agency?
I make the motion to begin the process of establishing lead agency status.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, thank you. All right, so let's move on to Spencer Oaks.
Okay.
Eric, that's going to be you, and Jen, I believe that's you.
That's me.
Hopefully you can see my screen. This is an application to modify the Spencer Oaks preliminary subdivision approval of a 5-lot subdivision located in the B residence zone that was approved in 2010 and then modified the following year. The proposed modification is to depict a portion of Sharkey's Way along lots 3, 4, and 5 to be abandoned, and the proposal would designate this area as an access and utility easement with a common driveway serving lots 4 and 5, as well as an out parcel that's also owned by the applicants, which you can see on the far left-hand side of this plan. This originally initiated from after the applicants received preliminary subdivision approval. They went to the Water Authority trying to extend water service for the lots on the far left here. The Water Authority wanted there to be a common driveway and a utility easement over that area so that there was ownership of the area rather than just being in an abandoned portion of roadway. So that's what initiated this. It's been a long time since the board reviewed the modification request. The planning department has been working with the applicant to provide complete plans, and we feel that they're at that point. The town engineer had recently identified 2 specific sort of deficiencies in the plans. When I wrote the memo, we had not received a follow-up report from the town engineer. We have since, and the town engineer has signed off on the project. One of the comments the town engineer made was this plan that you see right here. I apologize, it's difficult to see, but shown in light green as a common driveway coming off of the cul-de-sac of Sharkey's Way. That wasn't previously shown on this plan. What you see in front of you is an updated plan reflecting the town engineer's comment. The other issue that was raised was about a notation related to the scenic easement and access on the properties. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the lots on the far left. And what you will see on the map as it was drawn and approved is that there is a scenic easement of varying width that runs, between the interior of the lots where a home would be and the road and or common driveway that's serving as access. So obviously there needs to be some provision for access through the scenic easement. There was previously a note on the map that said lots 3 and 4 shall take access from the location shown on the map, which, as you can see in front of you, the map does not have a location indicated. The last time the board reviewed this, the planning department suggested that rather than amend the map to draw a specific driveway, that the language of the scenic easement could be crafted as such to provide for a single access of a width consistent with what the town code requires. It seems that the planning board agreed with that, but it was a while ago and it wasn't entirely clear. So the planning department had said the planning department recommends that the final subdivision includes clear language on clearing restrictions within those northern scenic easements to ensure that only area which is required for each site driveway and utilities is cleared. The planning board said after that meeting, the comments regarding the subdivision should be addressed, including scenic easement conditions regarding driveways. So it's something that the board has done. So you sort of have two options here, whether or not you want to have the map amended to illustrate a specific driveway location. We don't feel that that's necessary. We've done it before where the easement just provides for a singular access, and also that can be done at final subdivision. Again, this is a modification of the preliminary subdivision approval. They still need to submit a final subdivision application, and that is where most of the sort of house cleaning of the subdivision is done, making sure map notations are correct, making sure that draft copies of easements, CNRs are submitted to be reviewed by the board and to be found acceptable. So we're fine with the applicants doing it as a provision in the scenic easement, and we're fine with them submitting that draft language with a final subdivision, which is really the standard way to do it. Only a few other notes here. One is that these lots are currently in a UR map. The applicant actually already obtained a UR map modification and then a modification of that modification. We believe that there's actually going to be another modification that's needed, which is really essentially just to retire these lots from the UR map. Actually, these lots, this property is in the same UR map as Green Hollow Woods. And when that subdivision was done, those were originally UR parcels. The subdivision was created and then they were retired out of the UR map. The reason being, one of the main reasons to have the UR map is to perfect access in the area and throughout the map. If you're doing a subdivision of those properties, the roadway is going to be improved and the common driveway is going to be improved through the subdivision process. And actually, if I zoom out here on the map, you'll see obviously the applicants are going to have to complete the improvements to do the cul-de-sac and the common driveway. But just making a note of that, that will come. But again, that is also something that's usually completed this time as a condition of final subdivision approval, not at the final subdivision approval. The applicants also added two map notations, which were previously noted to be required. Those are actually usually only required at final, but the applicant provided them. They're fine. The fire marshal has signed off on this. So basically, in conclusion, the town engineer has deemed the application complete, so it appears that it's otherwise complete. The board should just determine if it agrees.
Let's see. It's Jen, please. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Joel, it's Joel, not
I have
Jen.
nothing to add unless you have any questions for me. Eric was very eloquent in his speech about this.
Good. I thought you'd say that. Jen.
Now it's my turn. Yeah, I agree with Eric. I think that this is, a change to a preliminary subdivision, and I think I'm good with the changes, and I think there's not much to talk about.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So I think we can just, if no one has any other comments, we'll go to the questions, which are pretty much what was outlined by Eric. Does the planning board find the notation on the map regarding access acceptable, provided draft language for the scenic easements and access permitted is submitted at the time of the final subdivision application?
Yes.
We're good with that. Yeah. Sounds like everybody's good with that. Does the planning board agree that the modification application will be complete and ready for approval once the town engineer's concerns have been addressed?
And again, the town engineer has signed off since the date of that memo, so you could amend that question to, is the application complete and ready for approval?
All right, is the application complete and ready for approval?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, let's check that one off the list. Thank you. All right, well, that is the end of our work session. We have quite a number.
I know David Woods is here. It's for Spring Brewery. It was on.
The applicant withdrew.
Sorry, David.
Yeah, I guess they didn't tell you that.
I'm here for another one, so.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
We've had worse, man.
Yeah, okay, so we have a number of public hearing schedulings, the first of which is recess. Adele Court. So Ava, we want to read that in?
In the matter of the application of Brisa's Padel site plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-181-1-5.1. Public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, at 6:30 PM or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard to consider the said application. I have to read the rest.
You know what? No, we don't typically do that, but I'm wanting to include point number
6.
6. Is that right? Yeah, 6.
Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or by attorney, or by call into the live stream or by written comment addressed to the Planning Board, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Comments may also be submitted to the Planning Board by email to planningboard@ehamptony.gov. All comments must be received by the Planning Board by the date and time of the public hearing.
Good. That's the part I think we should tell people ahead of time, right? Okay, do you want to make a motion to approve the resolution, to adopt the resolution?
Make a motion to adopt or to approve the public hearing as scheduled.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, schedule. Second one, you again, Estee Restaurants, same thing.
Okay, in the matter of the application of Estee Restaurant Site Plan, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-50-1-13.1 and Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-47-3-5. A public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, at 6:30 PM or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard to consider the said application. Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or by attorney, or by call into the live stream or by written comment addressed to the Planning Board, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Comments may also be submitted to the Planning Board by email to planningboard@ehamptony.gov. All comments must be received by the Planning Board by the date and time of the public hearing. I make a motion to approve the scheduled public hearing as scheduled.
That's good. I like that language. It's good.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have another public hearing scheduled. Jan, do you want someone else to read for you?
Yes, please. I think it's better in the room.
Okay, Bruce, do you want to read?
Absolutely.
That? Do you have that?
Thanks, Bruce.
Matter of the application of Eco Acres minor subdivision, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-135-2-11.2. This is the schedule of public hearing. The public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, at 6:30 PM. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard to consider the said application. Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or by attorney, or by call into the live stream or by written comment addressed to the Planning Board, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Comments may also be submitted to the Planning Board by email to planningboard@ehamptony.gov. All comments must be received by the Planning Board by the date and time of the public hearing.
Thank you. So while your vocal cords are warmed up, do you want to read Kuhn too? You may not have that one.
That one I don't. Oh, wait, do we get an email?
You make a motion.
Oh, we do have to make a
motion. I make a motion to schedule a public hearing.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We love public hearings. Keep scheduling them. Go ahead, do another one.
Do this one too. All right. In the matter of the application of Kuhn minor subdivision, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-24-13-29, to schedule a public hearing. Public hearing is hereby scheduled to be held at Town Hall, 159 Panago Road, East Hampton, on Wednesday, September 24th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as this matter may be heard to consider the said application. Any person or party wishing to be heard with respect to the foregoing may do so in person or by agent or by attorney or by call in to the live stream or by written comment addressed to the Planning Board, 300 Panago Place, Suite 103, East Hampton, New York, 11937. Comments may also be submitted to the Planning Board by email to planningboard@ehamptonny.gov. All comments must be received by the planning board by the date and time of the public hearing. I make a motion to schedule the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, that's all we have. Yep, no more public hearings.
Busy night.
It's going to be busy. It's going to be busy. All right, so we do have 3 personal wireless facility.
Who has one?
Oh, you have Nicholson. I'm so sorry. Go ahead, please.
In the matter of the application of Nicholson sub-waiver modification, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-133-1-13.3, 13.4, and 13.5. I have read the resolution amending the approval, and I move for its adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed and carried.
It's all yours.
So amended. All right, so I'm gonna read these cellular phone extensions of time. American Tower at 103 Flaggy Hill Road. In the matter of the application of American Tower at 103 Flaggy Hill Road, site plan special permit PWSF modification for Suffolk County Tax Map 37-02-01, extension of time. Let's see. We are looking to extend the time in 1-year increments in which to obtain a certificate of occupancy or until 1 year or until June 28th, 2026. I have read this extension of time request and call for its adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, unanimous. In the matter of the application of new singular wireless, also known as AT&T at SCWA Flamingo, site plan special permit, PWSF modification for Suffolk County Tax Map 300-16-02-13, extension of time. We are extending the time to obtain a certificate of occupancy in 1-year increments or until April 28th, 2026. I've read this extension of time request and call for its adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adopted. In the matter of the application of new singular wireless, aka AT&T Tower at Montauk site plan, special site plan, special permit, PWSF modification for Suffolk County Tax Map 300-049-03-46, extension of time. Looking to once again extend the time to obtain a certificate of occupancy in 1-year increments or until April 28th, 2026. I've read the request for an extension of time and call for its adoption.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Right. Again, passed and carried. So we've got a couple quick boards of review. The first is for Garbus Lane, 12 Garbus Lane. A private road report. Let's see. They've made a request that will involve an undertaking secured by a certified check or other surety to the town board. Road improvement units adequate to move forward with the building permit. The said undertaking is in the amount of $6,000. These requirements will be subject to review 1 year from the date of this resolution or August 27th, 2026. I have read this request and call for its adoption.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And finally, another board of review for 178 South Essex Street in Montauk, block 40 lots. What does PO stand for? You got planning guys, Eric. PO 11 and PO 12.
We have 2 other.
Part of.
Yeah, sorry.
Part of course it's part of. Yeah, thank you, Will, Eric. Part of 11 and part of 12, map 1013, URP number 169B in MN2, and Suffolk County Tax Map 300-28-5-26.2, looking for road improvements to be able to issue, to get a building permit issued. That will be an undertaking in the amount of $12,000. I have read the request and call for its adoption. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed and carried. Finally, how about those minutes? Minutes for August 13th, 2025.
Minutes?
I didn't see him.
Oh,
I didn't see any minutes.
oh, you didn't.
We should have got them to you.
I didn't go to the meeting, so.
So,
They were great.
all right, yeah, if you don't have the minutes and you haven't reviewed them, we'll add them to the agenda for September 10th.
Yep, got to do that.
Sounds good.
Yep, okay. All right, thanks. Well, then in that case,
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.